Don't tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value. So I try to be mindful, at all times, of what a difference a small human gesture can make to people in need. What does it really cost to take a moment to look someone in the eye, to give him a hug, to let her know, I get it. You're not alone? Rules for happiness, something to do, someone to love, something to hope for. Immanuel Kant. My own father had always said the measure of a man wasn't how many times or how hard he got knocked down, but how fast he got back up. I made a pledge to myself that I would get up and emerge from this debacle better for having gone through it. I would live up to the expectation I had for myself. I would be the kind of man I wanted to be. For too long in this society, we have celebrated unrestrained individualism over common community. For too long as a nation, we have been lulled by the anthem of self-interest. For a decade, led by Ronald Reagan, self-aggrandizement has been the full-throated cry of this society. I've got mine, so why don't you get yours, and what's in it for me? Funerals are for the living, I have always believed, and the job of the eulogist is to acknowledge the enormity of the loss they have just suffered and to help them appreciate that the legacy and accomplishments of their loved one have not died with them. I believe all Americans are born with certain inalienable rights. As a child of God, I believe my rights are not derived from the Constitution. My rights are not derived from any government. My rights are not denied by any majority. My rights are because I exist. They were given to me and each of my fellow citizens by our Creator, and they represent the essence of human dignity. Never tell a man what his interests are. Be straight and open with him about your own interests. And try to put yourself in his shoes. Try to understand his hopes and his limitations, and never insist that he do something you know he cannot. Right now, everyone is going to be there for you. I explained. Everyone will surround you with love and you'll be busy and have things to keep your mind off the worst. And then in 6 weeks, or maybe 12 weeks, everybody else's life is going to start to get back to normal. But your life isn't going to be normal again. As a matter of fact, as you probably understand already, it's going to get harder for you. And after a while you're going to start feeling guilty because you're going to be going to the same people constantly for help, or just to talk. And as their lives get back to normal, you're going to start to worry about leaning on them too much. There might come a time when you think, I'm asking too much. I've got to stop complaining. So when you're down and you feel guilty for burdening your family and friends, I said, pick up the phone and call me. Acknowledging that a woman's right to be safe from a gender-based attack was a civil right, I believed, was critically important in changing the American consciousness. When a right reaches the status and categorization of a civil right, it means the nation has arrived at a consensus that is non-negotiable. Violence against women would no longer be written off, once our criminal justice system, at the local, state and federal levels, recognized these as serious and inexcusable crimes. Women could stop blaming themselves. We must have public officials who will stand up and tell the people exactly what they think. Our failure in recent years has not been the failure of the people to meet the challenges placed before them, but rather the failure of both our great political parties to place those challenges honestly and courageously before the people, and to trust the willingness of the people to do the things that really need to be done. America is the promised land, because each generation bequeathed to its children a promise that they might not come to enjoy but which they fully expected their offspring to fulfill. So the words all men are created equal took a life of its own, ultimately destined to end slavery and enfranchise women. And the words equal protection and due process inevitably led to the end of the words separate but equal, ensuring that the walls of segregation would crumble, whether at the lunch counter or at the voting booth. 1983. To my generation has now come the challenge. In the days to come we will be tested on whether we have the moral courage, the realism, the idealism, the tenacity, and the ability to sacrifice some of the current comfort to invest in the future. I believe that this generation will rise to the challenge. The experts believe that, like the Democratic Party itself, the less than 40-year-old voters are prepared to sell their souls for some security, real or illusory. They have misjudged us. Just because our political heroes were murdered does not mean that the dream does not still live, buried deep in our broken hearts. He wanted me to understand two big things. First, that nobody, no group, is above others. Public servants are obliged to level with everybody, whether or not they'll like what he has to say. And second, that politics was a matter of personal honor. A man's word is his bond. You give your word, you keep it. For as long as I can remember, I've had a sort of romantic notion of what politics should be and can be. If you do politics the right way, I believe, you can actually make people's lives better. And integrity is the minimum ante to get into the game. Nearly 40 years after I first got involved, I remain captivated by the possibilities of politics and public service. In fact, I believe, as I know my grandpop did, that my chosen profession is a noble calling. Vice President Cheney has been the most dangerous vice president we've had probably in American history. The idea he doesn't realize that Article I of the Constitution defines the role of the Vice President of the United States, that's the executive branch. He works in the executive branch. He should understand that. Everyone should understand that. And the primary role of the Vice President of the United States of America is to support the President of the United States of America, give that President his or her best judgment when sought, and as Vice President, to preside over the Senate, only in a time when in fact there's a tie vote. The Constitution is explicit. The only authority the Vice President has from a legislative standpoint is the vote, only when there is a tie vote. He has no authority. Robert Bork, at opening of judiciary hearings. How should a judge go about finding the law? The only legitimate way, in my opinion, is by attempting to discern what those who made the law intended. As I wrote in an opinion for our court, the judge's responsibility is to discern how the framers' values, defined in the context of the world they knew, apply in the world we know. If a judge abandons intentions as his guide, there is no law available to him, and he begins to legislate a social agenda for the American people. That goes well beyond his powers. We all know, or at least we are told continuously, that we are a divided people. And we know there's a degree of truth in it. We have too often allowed our differences to prevail among us. We have too often allowed ambitious men to play off those differences for political gain. We have too often retreated behind our differences when no one really tried to lead us beyond them. Humans are capable of incredible cruelty. Our Father wanted me, my sister, and my brothers to understand. And just as dangerous, He made us see. Human beings were also capable of looking the other way and remaining silent when awful things were happening all around them.
Which quote did you like the most? Like, subscribe and comment.